So to start off with, you were born and raised in Russia. What brought you to England?
Yeah, that's a long story. I was born in Russia. I lived in many places actually before I even get to England. So I first moved to Spain a while ago. That was like about 10 years ago almost. And then I was living in New Zealand as well for a while, and then in Spain again. Only then I moved to London. So basically, it just all this was work and some personal relationships as well. Nothing special. I got to London after this crisis in Spain. And the whole Europe was in crisis by the time. So that's why I changed my job and I moved to London.
Do you enjoy London? Is it nice? Obviously, from a Russian perspective, I assume it's quite different culturally.
Well, yes, of course. Well, as I mentioned, I'm multicultural now, so I'm not afraid of different cultures. It's very, very different, yes, indeed. But with London, I have a very peculiar relationship. It's like love-hate relationship. There's a lot of stuff that I love in London, especially the fact whoever you work with. People are so multicultural, and it's probably one place on earth that you can find people from all over the world and just know them. It's already priceless, and that's my favorite part of London. Probably that's a lot of things in London that I don't like. The food. Okay. You can take that out.
No, I understand.
I mean, we all have our cultural preferences as well. I find this city a little bit cold to my taste, and it normally takes a long while to kind of get to know everybody. But again, I'm blessed that I was working all this and very multicultural kind of motley crews. And I always find people that I love. So I cannot complain about people. The weather probably is number one point, especially because I'm shooting outdoors many, many, many times. And I find it tricky, especially in winter.
I completely agree with you about the food, and I am English, so you're fine there. Don't worry.
Okay, fair enough.
So to switch to photography then, is photography something that was sort of abundant in your family, or is it something you've started on your own?
Definitely nothing on my family on the ground. I mean, not following any generations. I think I started to do silly things whilst in university when I was studying. I was like art degrees, and I just somebody gave me a camera, I believe, some old Russian Soviet camera actually, and all these lenses that are so popular right now among hipsters. they're fantastic, magical, all this weird bokeh. So I enjoy that, and what I mostly will be like taking flower shots or something like that, nature, until I kind of got to the point that I probably shot my first portrait, and that was it. It's like people's faces, and I put it on hold for a very, very long time, and I was working in different industries, and I get back to it actually here in London about 3 years ago. I mean, seriously getting back to it. I mean, I always was doing something here and there, but not professionally. So yeah, I got serious about 3 years ago in London here. For no reason at all, for no apparent reason. I just decided to give it a go.
Got an amazing body of work considering the amount of time that you...
Thank you.
As you say, taking it seriously.
But yeah, I am now.
One thing I'd love to ask you is just how you would describe your style, because obviously so many people will talk about other people's work, but how do you describe your work?
Okay. Not particularly fun to put in labels on things, but I would say it's anything that I can influence from, which is stuff that I like, and I like, I like, for example, I like dark art. Like strange way to say it. I like romantic art as well. So all those kind of prayer highlights, and you can see there's a vibe of that, and also, well. I really enjoy Russian art. Actually, never tried that yet, but I will. So I have no idea how to describe my style myself. I always find it very difficult. And when you're writing a bio for your website or giving an interview, it's like, I don't know. I just really leave people to decide on it. I can tell you what influences I have. That's probably not a description of style, just like kind of like inspiration coming from. So that's what I mean.
Well, I described you last week. So I had a podcast last week where I was talking about photographers that I think everybody should know about and trying to share around as much inspiration as possible. And I brought you up, and I describe you as, well, I describe you as the perfect blend of Agatha Serge and Emily Soto, who are my two favorite portrait photographers.
Oh my God. This is like a compliment and a half.
Well,
like
basically, I think that you have that, like you said, you have that like dark beauty to your work where there feels like there's more of a narrative, more of a story than with just a standard portrait where it's just a picture of a person. It does feel like there's more personality to it. But also I think you have that kind of soft beauty that you get with Emily Soto's work. So I think you're right in the middle of the two. Who are your biggest influences in photography?
Actually, by the way, I like both photographers that you mentioned, Emily and Agatha. I mean, big fan of both. Not necessarily influenced from them directly, but yeah, obviously they're giants. And I'd say also the dark part probably, and what you mentioned, the narrative is very important. I absolutely agree. It is very important, mostly because I'm actually also a novelist and I'm write stuff. And, that's why it's probably very important as well to me. I mean, just generally. And I like stories being stories, meaning being a series, for example, being based on some background story. And even though I improvise mostly, I sometimes find that after I already made something and I kind of go back and I think normally post factum about how to name it, I came up with a story that kind of post factum way, but probably was there at the very beginning, but not necessarily always planning ahead. My influences, I actually really like dark folklore and folklore, generally speaking. That was what I mean by dark. I think folklore is actually quite dark by the definition of it. And I'm a fan of heavy metal music, and there's a lot of inspiration, a lot of music in my shoots when I can. I'm in the studio to improve the mood, to put it there. I absolutely like, I follow a lot of photographers, but, and those are my constant inspiration, but I also inspired a lot by art and by, as well as contemporary, as well as, old masters and so on and so forth. I don't know. I just think sometimes mimicking the artist in the way photography can do, it's a really nice way to learn. Sometimes I even when you're retouching something or like kind of editing something, I really like to see tutorials, not so much on an actual photography retouching, but how the artist works, when they put highlights, when they put shadows, so all those different things are the inspiration actually.
Amazing. Something about your work, you have a lot of sets of images as opposed to just sort of standalone images. Of your sets of images, which are your favorites?
Yeah, I mean, mostly because if they're sets, they're mostly because they shoot for editorial. Probably that's why. But I think even when I shoot portraits, I kind of like to preserve the serious vibe.
Yeah.
That's true. My favorite, I don't know. I like this one that called Botticelli Interrupted. That was an editorial. Like everything got wrong in this day, but I really like the vibe of it.
Yeah.
And I really like the model, but I think I just saw her and I was like, you are the Botticelli girl. So that's I don't know, just sort of just personal. But I like them all. I mean, in a way, even the one that I don't like anymore, let's say the way I edited them or the way maybe I showed them because they're old, but I like them in a way that brought me a very nice experience on the date. And, they were stories for me.
They're part of the journey.
So it's very difficult to choose one. Yeah.
My personal favorite, although I love pretty much every single image you've ever done, I wish I could steal it for my own portfolio. My favorite set of images you have are the ones of your grandmother. Could you just talk to me about how that shoot came together?
Oh, this is just the portrait that I took at her home, and I was just visiting them. And my grandmother, she's 95 now. She's just a son. She's beautiful, isn't she?
Yeah.
I mean, I want to be 95 again. She's a very, very, very light person. I'm like. She's just has an incredible story to tell, just from her own experience, life experience. I mean, she lived through so much, so many actually interesting historical, even COVID. I mean, she actually lived through that too, just historical kind of features. So, and I just wanted to a portrait of my grandmother. There was no particular setup because it was just shot where she actually sits at her house, at her flat. That's a soft spot because she doesn't really walk that much. And she is like, cannot really move. I mean, I didn't want it to move my grandmother from place to place. So I just shot it there, and it was really nice, kind of colored light, and just loved it. And that was all. I was like, took really little of her time to shoot those portraits. I love them too.
They are stunning. Does she like them?
Oh yeah. Yes, yes. I sent her this one that they get a photo book Italia. It's like website portfolio. I was like, Grandma, you are in work, and she loved that. She was like, yeah, sure.
She's an international model.
She's an international model. Yeah, I would absolutely love to have her clothes. So I will be doing it all the time, and just she's far away, of course.
So to stick to the theme of models here, what do you look for in a model? What's the qualities that you look for physically in a model?
I do actually have a type, and not a type, but a preference for a character, and not necessarily even a model. It's a little bit a cliche to say that I'm looking for not very particular, not very commercial, to say faces, a more editorial vibe. And actually each time I'm looking for more and more editorial models rather than kind of like classic beauty. It doesn't mean that they're not beautiful. Of course, they would be very beautiful. But commercial type, what you can see in a commercial. Right now, it's a little bit mixed in fashion, but still, it's like more unconventional. Not necessarily go for red hats all the time, though they kind of like dominate portfolio, but that's just a coincidence, actually, to be very honest. They find me more than I find them. But I do like, for example, in terms of faces, I like faces, that's very weird thing to say, with texture. So freckles, moles, very like I don't know, even dark circles. Just that they actually bring something interesting, but vivid, like livery, I don't know, truthful to the whole imagery. And I really will kind of try that. And sometimes space is just so clear. I was like, what was like nothing to work with? And it's beautiful. It's gorgeous, but that's also it's a personal preference, like I say. And I really like models that can also bring something with them, meaning regarding the mood, regarding the posing, regarding the suggestion, wherever they can give you as well as you. And so that's same for creative team as well. Any kind of like, that when you're working with a model that actually really wants to work with you, you can tell. And so you can tell the opposite as well. And you can tell how responsive this person is, how even an experienced model, and how much they try, they connect, they do whatever you ask, but not in a bad way, but they really connected. And the opposite happens as well. So we all know that.
Oh yeah, definitely. Something that you just brought up, which I think is really important, is I think a lot of portraits of men work on the basis that the man has a lot of story to his face. There's a lot of textures, a lot of information in his life, in his face. Yes. Whereas I think sometimes with the way that we are trying to perfect everything, we get a lot of female portraits that have no story to them. They're just about sort of face value beauty and no sort of depth to them. Would that be fair?
No, I mean, I disagree in terms that there is that. And same for men. There's also a lot of plain portraits that they could be of men or old people. They normally bring a lot of personality as well, just by the way they are, and so much story written in the face. But still, you can just plainly take a shot and it will mean nothing. So it's not even about man, woman, child. Actually, it's more about what you do with it, right?
Yeah.
Well, in terms of processing, yes, there is certain commercial way of processing images, and there's certain editorial way of processing images. They're very different, and in editorial photography, weird faces are welcome, all the opposite of the commercial, and that's why, because in portrait photography as well, you can do very beautiful portrait, and it will connect you with the subject, and will sort of that's just one way to do it, and you can do something weird with the message behind, and so on and so forth. For me, I don't know. For me, I don't even can distinguish men and women. I mean, it's true I shoot more women than men. Again, accidentally. I have nothing against any of the genre. But not because I prefer something or I say something. I do think there is a lot of photographers that portray women, and right now in a very personal way, very intimate, I would say, even, and even if it's just portrait, just the face, very close to subject, and not beautifying barbarization and all this kind of to shoot things. Even if I shoot beauty, I try to make it, even a commercial thing, I try to make it as close as possible to the original. It's an editing mostly of not imperfectionist per se, but something that just, I don't know, light problem or color problem, but not a model problem, because even though they're gorgeous most of the time, they have perfect skin and so on. So take something that is just not supposed to be there, not something that actually should and must be there. I would never take anything of essentials. So that's important.
Your shoots, how planned out are they? Do you do a lot of sort of pre-production in planning what you're going to have, and how do you communicate that with the model?
I do plan most of the time, unless I have sometimes all those spontaneous shoots, they're mostly portraits. Then the model maybe contacts me, or I contact the model, and I have a day, I have a gap, and then they a little bit spontaneous, actually, like that. Editorial shoots, yes, I will definitely plan with the team, and I will be doing mood boards, and I will be communicating with the team, and the team, I like the team also participate, so there will be back and forth conversation. And once we get this skeleton of the idea, I would just tell to the model as well what we think about this, how it will be. And normally nothing is as planned, especially outdoors, especially in London,
Yeah.
Sometimes you can plan the mood board and you can say, well, the theme in terms of fashion or in terms of dresses, in terms of maybe makeup and hair. But once you get into the location and you it was, let's say, sunny all the week through, and you get to the location and just suddenly it's dark as hell and it's just a huge cloud, and you plan the mood because the mood will change. It's not the same. It's a sunny day, kind of a little bit more playing with the shadows, or kind of like happy vibe, or just suddenly very moody, very gray, very, which I like this mood actually, but it's different. So nothing ever is planned, even in the studio. Sometimes, I don't know, something happens and just like, where's my beauty dish? I cannot find the beauty dish. It's gone. So let's shoot with a reflector or something. That's the stuff. But yeah, I do like to do at least the mood board.
I think the most frustrating thing right now is the fact that we're all locked indoors, yet there's amazing light outside. It's so ironic that we can't get out and shoot, even though for once we've actually got consistently good light. It's very frustrating.
And it's it's never this week actually. It's normally bad kind of situation, and whether it's bad, but right now it's all the opposite. Then while we are indoors,
very frustrating.
I was waiting for that actually to kind of go back to shoot outdoors, and here you go.
Very quickly, I don't like to talk too much about camera gear because I think it's something that's kind of overemphasized in photography. But what camera do you use? What lenses are your favorites?
So I use Canon 5D Mark III, and my favorite lenses. I most of the time like my to-go lens will be just 50mm. I use the Sigma 1.4 art, and this is just my to-go lens. Yeah. But I'll go to and I do have 85 and use it less and less, maybe only for portraits and sometimes for beauty. I use 100. Also Canon's. She's like kind of a cheap lens actually, but really, really nice. And I do more and more like the wide angle right now. So like starting from 35 and 24. And going wider even. I don't have these lenses, but like 24, 70, it's another go-to.
You've worked in graphic design before. Is this how you first kind of learned photo editing? Was it graphic design taught you how to edit photos and then you started taking photos?
I guess in a while, yes. I mean, I was working mostly in graphic design, but I was mostly working in games and movies, films, film industry. I do have a lot of connection with post-production guys, even though I was doing what I was doing. But so with lighting and with people who do post-pro for films. And I guess that was interesting. It's for video, but still it's very interesting. Theoric knowledge, I would say, but no, I just needed to learn it anyway from the beginning, because wherever you use for graphic design, one thing, obviously Photoshop is something that I can live and breathe in, but since I am graphic designer, but the post-production itself, it's something that even though I find it that I needed to learn everything just from scratch, because it's different for photo post-production.
You teach workshops. How did that come about? What made you want to start teaching?
Mostly because there was just some demand and people were asking me, but I was never really kind of ready for that. But and I actually canceled the first actual workshop here in London just because, well, you know why. But it was supposed to be in April, So yeah, I always were giving those classes, which is just one-to-one and kind of tuition of they'll be going through my workflow and via Skype, and they're quite going well. We very surprised that really, really nice people contacted me for those classes, and everybody was just so perfect, perfect student, I would say. And, like when you contact people via internet, it could be anything, but I never had any bad experience at all. So it's like lucky me. So yes, I do enjoy teaching, by the way. I don't know why, just something that I like.
Do you ever find that when you're sort of reviewing your own work, you realize that you were subconsciously doing something that you weren't maybe aware that you were doing? You were shooting in a certain way, or you shoot certain types of images depending on the model, but without it being a conscious thought. Like, it's not a planned out thing. It's just you react differently to the person that you're shooting. Like, do you shoot one model where you're shooting more half body or more full body or more headshots, but it's not something that was in the plan? It's just the way that person kind of made you feel when you were shooting?
All the time. Yes, actually, yes. It's probably impossible not to connect to the model. It's sometimes some models, they're also very suggestive. And I was like, oh wow, that's great. I was like, should I climb the tree? I was like, yes, that's a great idea. It's not like I would ask you myself, but now that you're talking, or no, there's a brave models out there. They are really, really into giving you the best what they can, and I like that. So yes, absolutely. And sometimes it's some and in the opposite way. So sometimes it's just something doesn't work, or something's not connecting enough, and you just kind of work with what you give. Just try your best. But no, it's very important. It's very important to me. Sometimes you see the model in previews and their portfolio, and it's sort of because I never really met the model, and I don't do OCs. I never really met the model before I actually met the model. So it's only on the date of the photo shoot. So sometimes it's a surprise, and they look certainly different somehow. And it's like, oh no, they actually can do that and that. So yeah. Absolutely.
How do you deal with a shoot where it's just not quite working? It's not quite going to plan. Do you have like a backup plan always for when you're photographing?
That's a good question. I actually, I always say in London, especially with outdoor photography, of course it's a studio, it's fine, but you protect it. But if you go, and I worked a lot and most of the time natural light, even indoors, it's still most of the time it's natural light, and therefore, you really, really depends on weather circumstances, and you really, also you depend on wherever, your team is on time and stuff like that. And whilst that, it's really important to just go and do it. I always say, if you sit in London in the couch and wait till the weather be perfect, you will never do anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also, you will be actually probably missing those moments that they're actually great. I had this very weird shoot. The client just wanted it in the middle of January, and I was like, outdoors. I was like, but the light is just bad. But we have 2 hours of sun. Can you imagine that? 2 hours like straight. Was that 2 hours of photo shoot and 2 hours of sun from 10 to 12? Somehow I thought maybe. And we get it. And I wasn't even, hoping for that. I was just surprised. I was so surprised. But, you never know. At last, you can have a beautiful thing. Or it could be the opposite. But then you work with what you get. You just need to know how to work with what you get. Or, kind of like be risky. That's it.
If you could go back now from this point of view and go back and talk to yourself when you first started taking photography seriously, what piece of advice would you give yourself?
Well, I would just, but that's impossible. You don't have time. So I'm saying that's impossible because it doesn't really matter, because all that experience matters. I mean, I would destroy all my images from that period right now. I was still deleting them from time to time. I was like, I need to clean up. But yep. I do think if I wouldn't take them the way I took them or the way I edited them, yes, incorrect, all bad. Right now I can see that. But I wouldn't if I wouldn't, pass through. So be, I don't know, maybe it's like I'm very deterministic kind of sound, but I like that. Any experience is good.
I think photographers quite often want to have like a perfect backstory. They want to hide any bad images they've ever taken. And it sounds like you're taking all of that experience and you're kind of wearing it with pride.
No, I mean, I think I can hate everything that I've done like a week ago, because and at the same time I'm not. It's okay, and it's a good thing. It's nothing wrong with that. I think once you're kind of like, oh my God, I'm doing really well. Oh, it's a probably great feeling, but I'm not sure if it's a healthy feeling. So I think it's absolutely positive to, kind of be critical, but I just take it as an experience, not as a failure of any sort. And, I don't know, the only advice I would give myself is just to do it more. I was like, I wasn't doing it enough. But okay, I cannot change that.
Are there any celebrities that you wish you could photograph?
Oh gosh, yes. Well, I like Tilda Swinton.
Yeah,
she is something, obviously. And oh gosh, I'm so embarrassed because I don't remember the name of this actor, but I can tell you who he is.
Yeah,
he has this name that I just can never really remember. The one who played a Tormund in a Game of Thrones, the giant.
Oh, you're never going to get me. Nah.
Yes. Okay. So this guy, I would like to take just a portrait of him. I mean, he's such a character.
How are you doing in isolation? Are you enjoying isolation?
Enjoying isolation. Well, I think we all kind of stressed by the situation of what's happening everywhere. Not for myself, but for everybody else. And I'm fine with isolation, and most of the time I'm still doing what I was doing before. I mean, I work from home anyway, but I'm not getting mad or anything.
Yeah.
I do kind of sadly look this spring weather passing by. But again, this is just nothing. This is not really that important. And that's not what's important right now, right? I kind of try to keep eyes on what's important. And the most worries is of course, about my worries will be about what will happen with the jobs, what will happen with my, I don't know, relatives, just health. And that's it. That's it. That's the important stuff. And we really, need each other in those times. Try to do as much as online connection as I can. And just keep creative. I mean, I don't understand if somebody cannot know what to do with the free time. Well, you're actually given some free time, and unless you really work hard from home, of course. Some people don't. It's like, I mean, okay, you can make bread, you can do whatever you want. You can just follow what you are doing. I mean, there's so much things to learn, just practice, shoot from the window. Photographer, shoot yourself. I'm not doing that, but shoot your cats, shoot your husband, shoot your children. I don't know. Don't do that. Do whatever you like, but kind of like, well, you're not given any other better choice. So just enjoy what you are.
I think you'll find it's a cultural thing especially with English people, where what we do is we want something and we complain that we don't have something, and then when you give it to us, we then don't want it.
I think it's universal, right? I don't think it's particularly English or anything. I mean, everybody wants what we don't want, and then kind of like, just human, right?
And what's the first thing you want to do when you get out of isolation? You want to go out straight away and start shooting?
Thing is, I was actually about to leave England, but just by the time it's supposed to be happened in April, and I was moving to Barcelona to just live there. And again, it didn't happen yet. So that will be the first thing I will do. I will move. And of course, I will be I think we all will be going crazy around and try to shoot again. And the pain of mine is that I leave so many projects undone. I canceled about 9 shoots before, actually. It's kind of my farewell to London, and I was about to shoot as much as I can. I just planned everything. I got everything on list. and I was waiting for this weather, for this particular spring.
Yeah.
Well, what if it couldn't happen? It will happen somewhere else. So I'm positive.
If I could actually just check back, there's one question I really wanted to ask you, and I've kind of missed it. I'd really, really love to find out, how long did it take from you starting to photograph people for you to find your style? Because I think you have a very clear, defined style, but how many shoots did it take, or how many months or years did you start to really find your style?
I think I still work in progress. I would say I'm more defined, of course, now. And I do know that some people recognize something, which I don't know exactly what it is. You understand, I cannot define myself. And I don't really mind to define it. I think what I want to do is actually, again, to change and to, evolve. And I don't know which way, and I will. I promise myself. And so it's not that I even want this... if it's unconscious, probably that I do have some, pattern, but I don't really go towards it. So if somebody thinks that it's consistent right now, I'm really glad that it is. I think it's more, suspect it's more about the mood rather than maybe their technical style. And sometimes I have a lot of questions about in classes about how would I be consistent with my style. So my Instagram look good, my portfolio look kind of like similar one image to another. And I always say that's not what I would go for, but I would rather go for the general mood of, not for the like color grading or, you know what I mean, or composition advice, but just what message, what is the mood, what is the, your state of mind, what is, so all that stuff. And that's probably why you actually can recognize one photographer from another. It's my theory anyway.
Yeah, I think it's your personality that shows up more than people getting tied up with like technical aspects or equipment or anything like that. I think it's the personality of the photographer is usually the most abundant thing in the photo. And I think that's what stands out the most with your work.
I think if everybody's work, what really stands out is, the personality, it's true. That's absolutely true.
So the whole purpose for me doing these podcasts in its entirety is to try and find as many amazing photographers or creatives and bring them to the attention of other people. So what I need you to do is tell everybody where they can find your work. So your website, your Instagram, and so on. Yeah,
so my Instagram account as well as my Facebook account is just Olga Gridina Photography. My name and photography. And my website is just www.olgagridina.com. So that's simple as that.
So I just want to say thank you so much for doing this. It really does mean the world to me. I'm an absolutely enormous fan of yours. I've been pretty much terrified this whole interview, so it's great to talk to you.
Really? Oh my God, bye. Thank you so much as well for inviting me. And I really, really had a great time and hope everything will be better soon. And thank you so much, and really nice to meet you. Bright flashing light.